Dr. Malthouse is here, and 4 others.
These doctors, I want you to give a round of applause for they are leaders, they are And I got news for you. There's lots more of them that are coming out. You all know who he is. Give it up for Dr. Charles Huff.
Well, it is wonderful to be here in Vancouver. And we thank God that God has given us such a beautiful day. I and Dr. Stephen Malthouse and some of the other doctors that will
This
be
is
speaking
Dr. Huff.
to you are going on a tour of some of the northern cities.
Woo!
Because British Columbians need to be educated about COVID. And they need to know the truth about these COVID shots. The medical authorities have said that it is very important that British Columbians get their information on COVID from a reliable source. So that is why we are going on tour.
Woo!
These COVID shots have now broken all records for the most dangerous and ineffective medical therapy in history. If you look at the VAERS, the open VAERS, that's the Vaccine Injury Reporting System from the United States, you will see that 22,000 people died suddenly and unexpectedly after their COVID shot so far. And the study from Harvard 10 years ago showed that less than 1% of vaccine injuries are ever reported. So you do the math. And the open VAERS also records more than 1 million vaccine injuries from this shot that we are assured is safe. These were 1 million people vaccine injured and 22,000 dead who were told that this injection would keep them safe.
Hey guys.
Never before in human history has any medical treatment killed and injured so many people and given so little benefit in such a short space of time. This is history in the making.
Sorry.
90% of British Columbia is now vaxxed, and yet we have higher COVID rates than ever before. In fact, there's so many people with COVID that Bonnie Henry's told us to give up even testing and contact tracing. That is the simplest evidence that these shots are neither safe nor effective.
They're embarrassed. Stop testing! We're gonna get embarrassed!
For the last 2 years, we have been bombarded with fear propaganda through the government-controlled media. They have driven fear into every Canadian home.
Okay.
And now millions of Canadians, coerced by this fear, have been willing victims of this medical experiment in order to try and keep themselves safe. And I constantly am contacted by people who are vaccine injured and can no longer work because of what these shots have done to them. And yet we are told they are safe and effective. And millions more have been forced to have these shots through threats and coercion, with the threat of losing their jobs. So we are in a very, very difficult situation. All of the restrictions that have been put upon us over the past 2 years have been done in the name of keeping you safe. Yet the fact that the medical authorities have actively withheld effective and safe outpatient therapy from anyone who gets COVID leads us to believe that this is not about safety. The fact that the medical authorities refuse to recognize the effectiveness of natural immunity, despite the fact that there are more than 140 scientific studies showing the safety of natural immunity and the effectiveness of natural immunity, leads us to believe that this is not about safety. This is about getting as many shots into as many arms as possible. The fact that they are mandating an experimental vaccine with completely unknown long-term consequences that has the worst track record of short-term safety of any medical product in history tells us that this is not about safety. The fact that any doctor who dares to question the safety of this incredibly safe product gets threatened and investigated and disciplined by the medical authorities, and I speak from first-hand experience, leads me to believe that this is not about safety. They should be encouraging doctors to question its safety. The fact that when I try to report vaccine injuries on my own patients, they get denied and told that these are not vaccine injuries, these are all coincidences, helps me to believe that this is not about safety.
Follow the money.
The fact that vaccine-injured people who refuse to have their next shot are now discriminated against and lose their freedoms because they refuse to have more of what has already disabled them and hurt them, tells us that this is not about safety. The fact that our healthcare system is now in a crisis because they have fired all of the perfectly healthy, unvaccinated healthcare workers, and now all the vaxxed ones have COVID, so they're canceling surgeries and in a crisis, tells us that this is not about safety. And the fact that they now want to vaccinate all of our children for whom COVID poses no risk at all. It is quite clearly that this is not about safety. There is something far more sinister at work here. So the doctor's tour is heading north because people need to know the true medical facts about the safety and effectiveness of the COVID vaccines.
0 and 0. None. No safety, no effectiveness.
So I would now like to hand over to Dr. Bis Bastian. Dr. Bastian worked most of her career in Smithers up in the north and is now retired. And so I'm going to introduce her to say a few words.
Hi, and welcome. And oh, this has been so exciting to do this march with all of you. Wasn't it powerful? Yeah, wow. Okay, so a quick introduction. As Charles said, I've worked 45 plus years in northern BC. I just retired the week before COVID started.
Oh, lucky you.
So why am I here? And I mean, there's many reasons. All the things that Charles says, I back up 100%. There's no doubt. But I'll tell you my story just quickly. So when this started, I got a letter. And many of us did who are newly retired saying, hey, would you guys like to come back and start working and man a COVID clinic for us? You know, let's go jam people with these vaccines. Well, you know, I've always, in all my practice, stood by my Hippocratic oath, do no harm. I've always thought due diligence, and I've always thought informed consent. So what do I do as a doctor the first thing I have to do is do my research. And that means not going to the media, not going to the government, not going to the continuing medical education, spoon-fed stuff they gave doctors. No, it means doing your own research. Within my first half hour of doing this research, there were so many red flags with these new therapies that I dug my heels in. So what were the red flags? A few of them. I mean, there were so many. One, how do you do a clinical trial in 2 months? Right? And then, what are you doing destroying your control group? Now, I knew this because a friend of mine's son had volunteered for the trials in northern Scotland. 1 shot, great, no side effects. 2 shots, great, no side effects. Then he got a call a month later saying, you were in the placebo group. Now you can come in and get your shot. There goes the control group. How do you collect data of ongoing problems with no control group? This is unheard of in good science, right? Then there was the whole problem with the nanoparticles. Part of what I did was GP oncology for 20 years. One of the biggest challenges we had was treating brain cancer because all we could do was cut and radiate. And what they wanted was to get all this chemo into the brain to reduce tumor sizes. So what did they use to do that? You got it. Lipid nanoparticles. This is what's in these vaccines, as most of you know. And when I first started studying and realizing it, that told me whatever is in this mRNA, this newfound therapy, is now going to access the most sacred parts of our bodies. Our central nervous system, our brain, which creates emotion, our brain, which controls our whole body. This is terrible stuff to be dealing with. It was like, my God, another big red flag. So one of the things I then thought was, look, you know, we really have to say no. I wrote a letter to the college and I said, where's your due diligence? What about the Hippocratic Oath? What about informed consent? How can you give anybody informed consent when you have no idea? And we still have no idea what the long-term effects of these therapies are going to be. It's impossible. And what about our children? Hey, what 5-year-old, what 7-year-old, what 9-year-old can give informed consent? I have trouble getting my mind around the science of these new therapies. The guys who invented them have trouble getting their minds around the possibilities of what could come in the future. For God's sakes, this stuff cannot go into our children's bodies. No, no, no.
Let me introduce Dr. Anna Kindy.
Hi, Vancouver! I'm from the island, from Campbell River area. I'm very, very uncomfortable public speaking, so I've got my little piece of paper here, so please. But I'm here because this is really important. My name's Anna Kindy. I graduated medical school in 1986. I've been working in Campbell River for the last 23 years. My father left the Ukraine during Stalin years, so I've always been kind of alert about tyranny. And as far as I'm concerned, what is happening with mandates is medical tyranny. As a physician, our #1 duty is informed consent. And saying vaccines are safe and effective is not informed consent. Informed consent is a discussion of risk versus benefit. Risk versus benefit. And risks are different depending on the age group. Children are at statistically zero risk of COVID, but they are not at statistically zero risk of side effects of vaccines. So what are we doing? Mandating our children to get vaccinated. And our children cannot go to restaurants. They can't go on planes to visit their grandparents. This is called a medical tyranny. Mandates are supposed to, if they should not exist. There is no evidence that vaccines prevent the spread of disease. No evidence, zero. We have evidence to the contrary. So we must get rid of these mandates and stop vaccinating our children.
I don't know why I'm the only one standing on this side. Maybe it's because I get to be the MC. I'd like to introduce you to another one of our physician team, Dr. Rachel Maurice.
Hi, Vancouver. This is a city I actually grew up in. I don't live here anymore, but it's really nice to be back and see so many people out here. I've been living in Kamloops now for about almost 17 years, so I've been practicing anesthesia there. An anesthesiologist, yes, it is a physician. A lot of people don't actually know that. So I'm here, and I ended up here because I'm a mom of 2 teenage kids. And when all of this started unfolding almost a couple years ago, growing up with a mother who was a lawyer, started questioning things early on. I questioned just about everything. But I was just sitting back watching things unfold, and certain things started to look a little suspicious. And as time went on, more and more evidence seemed to support my suspicions. And again, I was asking a lot of questions of colleagues in the operating room and the nurses and the surgeons, and it was a bit disturbing that people didn't seem to be questioning the same things. And so I felt actually quite alone in my thoughts. And it actually wasn't until I read Dr. Malthouse's open letter to Bonnie Henry that I thought, thankfully, there's someone else who's speaking up, and I felt a lot more supported, and found another group of colleagues. So again, as things were moving along, I kind of got extremely concerned when it was about, I guess, May or June 2021, when they said, okay, now it's time for the teenagers, 12 plus, to get their shots. And they can go without their parents' consent. We can do it behind their backs and not even give them the information. And I said, that is not happening with my children. The minute I had kids, the biggest priority for me was to keep them as healthy and safe as possible.
Yeah, I'm okay too.
So, long story short, I did absolutely everything in my power to educate them, because obviously the government was taking control away from the parents or any adults. But because of the pressure, coercion, and everything going on with everybody, my kids ended up getting both shots. So that was devastating to me. I know a lot of people out there feel the same, with loved ones, family, friends, colleagues who desperately try to give them all the information and try to keep them from harm's way. So I started thinking, what can I do now? I felt like I failed. I felt like I couldn't even keep my own kids safe. Louder? Sorry. Okay, I'll eat the microphone, Lizzie. So anyways, this opportunity came before me to speak on the doctor's tour, and my initial reaction was, I can't do this. I'm not a public speaker. I actually am terrified standing in public speaking, but thank you. But the other thing was, for most of us, physicians, you know, we see the people speaking out and we see them get smeared and attacked and vilified and threatened and all sorts of stuff. And I thought, I've got kids and I have to support them and you know, just like anyone else, you know, people are afraid of being judged. Yeah. But I've had, through other experiences in my life, one of them being a very torturous divorce experience, I've made a lot of decisions through fear, as I think a lot of people in this whole world is making decisions based on fear now. I have spent a lot of time trying to avoid doing that or trying to change that and starting to make decisions based on my heart and through love. And so I sat back and when I just let the fear kind of wash through me and feel my heart, I knew that I had to actually speak up, whatever the cost, because there was nothing more important than my kids and everyone else's kids out there. So I decided that even though I'm just one voice, I know that every single person out there has a unique way to come across and touch another person and inspire someone and give them courage. And so for me, that's what I wanted to do. If there's one person that can just ripple through an entire crowd and across the world, and so that's what I needed to do, and that's how I ended up here. Thanks.
So like most of my career, I'm coming from left field. Or the left side of the stage anyway.
Yeah.
So the Doctors on Tour, educate before you vaccinate. That's what we're going to do. We're going to the different communities around British Columbia, and hopefully something will be carried across the country to let parents and teachers, grandparents, and young people know the facts about COVID, but almost more importantly, about this COVID shot, which, as Dr. Hoff has said, has no benefits for just about any age group that we can find in the research. And certainly for the 5 to 11-year-olds, there's absolutely no reason that those children should be jabbed. What we discovered in our own research is that not only is the shot not beneficial, the mortality rate for children in Canada statistically is 0. There are probably 14 to 15 children that died with COVID, but none that we know of died with COVID. So there's no need for a shot for these kids. But this jab has already been shown to be the greatest killer of vaccinations since vaccination records began. The mortality rate, the morbidity rate, we really don't even know what it is because Canada has such a poor way of recording the negative results. Doctors, when they hand in reports, have them sent back to them. Coincidence? Or, in some cases, public health calls the patient behind the doctor's back and tells them to go get the second shot. Despite the fact the person may have a paralysis of their face, they may be having chronic pain down the arm, they may not be able to walk or hear or see. And this is what we're up against. We've done lots of videos, and we've spoken to our colleagues, and you know, there are quite a few doctors out there in the woodwork. There comes a certain point, a tipping point, where those doctors say no more. And we're coming to that point. There are 5 of us on the stage right now, but soon you'll be seeing 35. We felt that it was absolutely important that just as we're all here today seeing each other face to face, that going out into the communities and talking to people is the best way to give them the tools, the information to protect their children. So I have a question for you. First of all, I think we should have a cheer for freedom. What is freedom? We use that word, we shout it, but do we understand what it is?
Choice!
We know it's choice, but how do you make a choice when you're full of fear? How do you make a choice when your neighbor won't speak to you?
Oh.
How do you make a choice?
Nice. Look what
When
they
the
just
government
did.
is telling you what
They
you
just
need to
sprayed
protect
us.
your arm and the arms of
They
your children.
literally just sprayed us. Look at that.
We need courage. But courage is not without fear. Courage is knowing what the right thing to do is and doing it even if you're afraid. I think you all know this because every one of you, I'm sure, has been facing the same pushback that we have as doctors. Some of us are having the threat of our licenses being revoked and our ability to feed our families being removed. And I think it's the same for many people in this audience here, that you also have the same risk of losing your jobs. But we will get through this, because really we are one family here. And in fact, all of humanity is one family. That we see through a different, let's say, a different lens, depending on what you know. So our job as physicians is to read the literature, to look through the research, and to be able to give you the information you know that you need to be able to make an informed decision. That is our job. But you have a job as well. And I think we're seeing that job now is to unite the vaxxed and the unvaxxed. When we speak to audiences, we don't care. Because we're out there really to just save the kids. But we also have to save the parents of the kids. So what I'm saying to you is two jobs that you have in front of you. One is to spread the word that our children need saving. We have to stand up and protect them. And number two is that we are one family, vaxxed or unvaxxed, it doesn't matter. And our job is to bring, I think, as people that can see a little bit more clearly than the other side of the fence, is to try to be there when those people look over into your backyard and are needing the information to change and to join the family again. Thank you.
These are all doctors.
All right, let's hear it for the doctor!
Oh, wrong way.
Let's give a big
see, dude.
Doctors on Tour, we are so grateful and so proud of every single one of them. Are we not, Vancouver? It is amazing to have doctors speak out to give credibility to events like this. Without them, we're just a bunch of tinfoil hat wearing people, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for coming up and speaking. I'm going to get this stage here cleared off so we can get it ready for our next speakers that are coming up.
Hey guys,
Do we have Byron and Michelle here? I'm going to do an introduction. I'm hoping that they're here. I haven't seen them yet. Our next speaker is an ultra-marathon runner.
yeah, it's about 25. This is a little bit fast.
Okay, almost
So it's about
4:30.
4:30.
Okay, thank you.
4:32.
All right.